Good afternoon. It's actually nice to be here. I see people like Mike and Barry, who actually I've worked with before as public defenders, and I'll make it real easy, at least with respect to the Broward Sheriff's Office. And I invite you to actually move to Broward because we won't have problems here. That we believe you have a right to film. We even have training materials for our officers, instructing them that people have a right to film them so long as you don't obstruct sidewalks and things like that. That we don't have a problem with it, but to give you an idea of what I'm saying, that we have a different perspective. First of all, this sheriff, Scott Israel, I want to point out, came and spoke to the ACLU, spoke to you all a few months back. Very few sheriffs do that. This sheriff actually believes in this concept, and I think the sign that he brought me in is a sign of his commitment to it, because on top of what Mickey read to you, I'm also an ACLU member since 1988. I might be one of the few in the country who's probably both a member of the ACLU and the Association of Police Legal Advice. On top of that, by the way, I'd also add I was the pro bono lead counsel for the Occupy for Lauderdale group. So I am certain I'm one of the few Occupy lawyers who is now a police legal advisor. In fact, the bunch of the other guys on command staff who serve with me like to joke from time to time. So does this one bother you as a civil libertarian? So we're changing the culture. We're winning them over at least. So we are making progress. But on this issue of photography, we frankly don't have a problem with it. The case law, Smith, which is in the 11th, Glick and other cases that we look at, and the advice we've given our guys is that you do have a right to film. Not only that, we've told them, why don't you just presume, even though it's not the case, that there's a camera on you from when you start your shift to you end your shift. You'll do a better job. And since I see the cop block and other shirts and stuff today here, if you guys have information about bad guys who work for us, come and tell us. Report it to IA. We take it seriously. We let one of our deputies go this last week just for irresponsibility. So we do take things seriously, at least with the Broward Sheriff's Office. So glad you invited me, and I'm happy to present what will be a Broward police perspective, probably not a normal police perspective, but I do want to thank you for inviting me today.
Let's go right ahead.
Yeah, well, okay, you know, we always hear a lot of PR from the police departments. You know, I'm not saying he's doing that, but they do. I mean, they always put their best people out there and say, yeah, we do it all by the book and all that. But a lot of times the problem is you go out on the streets, it's a completely different story. And for example, the Broward SO, the Sheriff's Office, they were accused in the newspaper, the Sun Sentinel, of they did this raid of a party or a fraternity party, and one of the guys they arrested, well, he was quoted in the Sun Sentinel as saying, well, yeah, they arrested me, I was video recording when I left jail. I think he was arrested for resisting arrest, which in Florida is a common charge if you haven't done anything illegal, but they still want to arrest you for something. Resisting arrest without violence. And I've been nailed to that for 3 times, and I've been acquitted of that for 3 times. So this guy, I reached out to him personally to talk to him, and he didn't get back to me. But he was quoted in the Sun Sentinel. And our public records group, Jeff and Thomas, we requested the public records, and you guys did great, actually. We got the records in 24 hours or less of all what the sheriff's version of what took place that night. And of course, there was no mention of this student who was video recording. He was arrested, according to the police report, for mouthing off and for refusing to leave when they told him to leave. And that's great. But you know, I was a police reporter for newspapers before I started my blog. I was a police reporter in the Arizona Republic. I was a police reporter in the San Bernardino Sun. I covered the police beat in New Mexico. And I got very familiar with their tactics. And, you know, one thing I learned is just because they write something on a police report doesn't mean it's exactly true. In fact, you know, cops, and I say they're trained to lie, and I don't have any evidence that they're trained to lie. But read enough of these police reports, they all read the same a lot of times. And they're all, you can have one from Miami, Seattle, New York, and it's like, I was in fear for my life, he wasn't complying, I had to beat him up, you know, he put the camera on my face, I thought it was a gun. And you know, where the hell did they learn this? You know, I mean, are they being trained, or are they all coming up with this on their own? I don't think so. So, and the problem I see is they don't want people reporting them, because that makes it very difficult for them to stretch the truth in their police reports. And suddenly, before the cameras were everywhere, you could be arrested and you were maybe asked a question. Maybe you would ask the officer, hey, what's their name? They don't like that. They don't like to be asked their names. And we have the right, and usually it's our policy to give their name because, they're professional, they're supposedly professional government officials. And they'll arrest you, and in their arrest report, they say, well, he took a swing at me. And then you go up to the court, and the judge and the jury will believe the cop. Oh, he took a swing at me. And you're there, well, no, that's not true. But, they have, in the eyes of the legal system, they have more credibility than anybody else. Then you introduce a camera, and you say, well, here, look at this video. And it's like the video shows, no, he wasn't resisting. He wasn't taking a swing. Well, case dismissed. And that's the problem. That's why these cops, the cops who have nothing to hide, they'll tell you, and I've been told this many times, hey, I don't mind you recording. Please stand on the sidewalk, record all you want, please don't interfere. And I don't. I don't want to get too close anyway, because if you're shooting video, you don't want to get too close. You want to capture what's really happening. But you have enough cops who would tell you, they'll come up to you and they say, turn that off. And we're trained, we grew up in this country, we're saying, okay, we want to be good citizens, we want to listen to police officers. So yeah, okay, this guy has a gun, he has a badge, he's got muscles, he's yelling at me, he's got all these, he has a pepper spray, and a taser, and his billy club, and he's got all these muscle-bound cops behind him, and they're very intimidating. And they turn that off. And then you're like, do I have to turn it off, or am I committing a crime? And then they'll turn around and say, no, I'm asking you to turn it off. I'm asking you, as they edge closer to you, as they surround you, and it's really a request, it's like, okay, you start fearing for your life. Of course, that's the line they use. They go, oh, I'm in fear for my life, which gives them, once they say they're in fear for their life, they can take your life. And we saw that with, you paid attention to the Kevin Thomas case out in California, where these cops from Fullerton beat up this homeless man, and they knew he was mentally ill, because they knew he was part of this community, they knew he was. And they beat him up, and they killed him. Over 9 minutes, they beat him up, they tased him, they kicked him. It was horrible. It was caught on the surveillance camera. The audio was captured on the cop's own body recorder. And they were recently acquitted. And that had a huge impact on me. And it has a lot of people I know it had a huge impact on a lot of people, because I personally have been beat up. I personally had my head bashed into the sidewalk. I personally been dragged down the escalator on the shoulder. I personally thought I was going to be killed. And if you've never been in that situation, you can't really judge, because when you're under a pile of 2 or 3 cops who weigh maybe 250 pounds of all muscle, and they're telling you stop resisting, and you can't even move, and they're telling you put your hand behind your back, and your hand is like basically holding your body up, you can't really put your hand behind your back, and all you're trying to do is survive, and they're beating you, they're choking you, and because you're not complying. They always say that. Just the other day, I think it was a California Highway Patrol story. Well, he wasn't complying, so we had to tase him, we had to beat him up, we had to kill him. Yesterday, it was in Arizona, where the cops, the deputies, Pinal County deputies, they shot this guy to death, and they claimed in their arrest report, well, he was reaching for his gun, we had to kill him. And then there was a cell phone video that shows he had his hands up in the air. That came out after the police report. And of course, the Pinal County Sheriff says, well, you know what? They're doing a spin. They're saying, I would have killed him anyway. I would have killed him before, because he wasn't compliant. And we have to ask ourselves, what kind of society are we living in, where we cannot refuse an unlawful order, or we can't even question a cop's orders? Because, we do have freedom of speech. We do have freedom of the press. And we've always had freedom of the press in this country, but it wasn't until recently that we actually have access to the press. In fact, when I started in the newspaper business, I would come over here to one of these little, one of these panels. I would be the guy taking pictures or taking notes, and tell me stay over there and you're taking pictures. That's the media, and nobody else is taking pictures. Now, how many cameras are out there? And that's awesome, because this young lady here, she's doing a film. She's going back to London. She's going to do her take on the thing. She might not put the whole thing up. And then, this guy might want to see the whole thing. So everyone's going to put their own take into it, but we should have the right to observe and record. And the First Amendment makes no difference between, well, you have credentials and you don't. You work for CBS and you don't. You work for the Miami Herald and you don't. When I was a cop reporter, I had the credentials. I would go up to the police beat, the scenes, and they're like, you always have the cops in the beginning. Where do you get out of here? And then you show them your press badge, and they're like, okay, well, wait for the PIO, the Public Information Officer. which, you know, if you're part of the mainstream media, then you usually good terms with them and they talk to you and that's the way it works. But, you know, what if you're not working for the media? You know, what if you're just a guy who just happens to come across the scene and they ask you for your credentials? Well, there's no law that says you are required to have credentials if you're shooting in public, in a street. There's no law. There's no law that gives credentialed journalists any more power or privilege than non-credentialed citizens. And that's the one thing I really want to emphasize, because the media, the mainstream media, you know, they're laying people off. They're not covering the news as they should. Everything is going through a huge transition, and part of this transition is you guys, with your cameras. Part of the new media, I call this new media, is everybody is a journalist at any time. And this is really the success of my website, is I'm one guy, and I write all these stories, but the reason I'm writing these stories is because people are sending me their videos, their stories. We have Teresa, who drove in from Louisiana, and she was arrested. She walked into a police department in her little small town in Crowley, Louisiana, and she has a pending lawsuit. She walked in there and showed them a copy of the newspaper article for the neighbor in town, because the local media would not write about her lawsuit. Because that's how the media works. You know, sometimes they won't report on their truth. They don't want to piss off the local police departments. And then, so if they're the only ones who have the right to report, then who's getting the truth? She was actually she went in there, and I'm going to record this. She walks into the police lobby, and of course they're recording her. And she wants to basically document her dropping off the newspapers. They walked in there and they said, "You have to leave." She said, "I want to drop this off." "You have to leave." She said, "I have the right to be here. You're disturbing, you're disrupting, or disturbing, and she wasn't, they're the ones who created the disturbance. She was just being professional. She has the right. And we can't forget that these cops are government officials. We can't forget, and I know they hate to hear this, that they work for us. We can't forget that. You know, and we don't work for them. They work for us. And we should demand professional accountability. We should demand that, you know, respect. And I think we should respect them as professionals, but we can't. When they say you have to leave here, and well, tell me what law. I mean, I think you asked what law. And you know what? She was arrested. And of course, the media, of course, the local newspaper did report on that arrest. They didn't report on her previously. No, of course not. Then they put her picture up there, and they go, "Yeah, well, she was arrested." Well, she emailed me. It was like 4 or 5 in the morning. I got this email, and I'm like dead tired, and I don't sleep because I got everyone emailing me for these stories because the media's not reporting it. And I said, well, you know, let me put this up there. And what I do is I put the phone number of the police department there, and I say, call these people. Call them. And they do. My readers call, and they call, and they call, and they call nonstop. And this is a public listed number. Yeah, these are public officials. You know, we have the right to petition the government for grievances. So, you know, that's part of the First Amendment too. Let's not forget that. And they got really pissed off, and they said, well, we don't like that, and we're going to say, we're going to tell her, they try to come up with more intimidation tactics. They come, well, we don't back down. We keep calling, and guess what? They dropped the charges. They dismissed the charges. And if it wasn't for those people calling, if it wasn't for the reporting that my readers do, and the writing I do, all of us were combined, working together, you know, she probably would have been convicted. And because the local media, we know, that's already been proven. They're not going to be on her side. They're going to be on the police side. And that's just one small example. That happens every single day in this country. And that's a big issue. So I really want to emphasize, be your own media. Don't forget that. Don't forget that these guys are the credentials in my area. They don't have any more rights than you do. And it was pretty funny because when I came back to Miami from Arizona, I was suddenly a freelance journalist. I didn't have the press pass. And I was after in 2007 on Biscayne Boulevard taking pictures of working for a local website. But I didn't have the credentials. It was just a brand new website. And I was taking pictures, and they're like, "You gotta leave." I said, "Well, I want to stay. I want to take pictures." "No, you have to leave." I have the right to be here. They said, "This is a private matter. This is a public road." "Well, we're doing our job." "Well, so am I." I was arrested. They pounced on me, 5 of them. They pounded my head into the pavement. They broke my lens. They broke my flash. They threw me in jail for 16 hours, 9 misdemeanors. The last photo I took showed the cops coming toward me, surrounding me. It showed Biscayne Boulevard behind them. If you're familiar with Biscayne Boulevard, that's a very busy street. They claimed in their police report that I was standing in the middle of Biscayne Boulevard blocking traffic. He was standing in the middle of Biscayne, you know, and we were just told to leave, but he was such a distraction. He was blocking traffic. You have to be an idiot to do that, number one. And number two, that wasn't what happened, and the pictures showed that. But of course, you know, in Miami, state attorney doesn't really care. And so they're like, well, we'll prosecute this anyway. He started a blog. Look out, he put a picture up there. Now he thinks that we're going to back down. Well, they didn't back down, and neither did I. And this is where we're at. And the more they try to come after me, I've been arrested 3 times, I've beaten all my cases, I've been threatened with arrest, I've been threatened to get thrown in prison by the Boston Police Department for witness intimidation, for putting a publicly listed number of PIO, public information officer. And they came after me and said, yeah, we're going to put you in prison for 10 years. You know, you're intimidating a witness. You know, that charge in Boston is actually reserved for mobsters and gangsters, people who actually do, you know, threaten to kill a witness and to testify. Have her putting a phone number up there and say, hey, call the state and tell her that she's out of line because she was trying to put Taylor Hardy, you know, one of my crew members, in prison for calling her and recording her voice and asking her a simple question. So these cops, they have all these tactics that they try to come after you with. And it can be very, very intimidating if you're by yourself, and, you know, you have a lot of money. I mean, they have endless resources. It's your resources, your money. You're paying them, they just throw it back and they come after you, they keep coming after you. And, but you know, if we stick together, and I've been very fortunate where my readers come together because they know it's not just about me, it's about all of us. And my readers have come together, we raised money for my cases and we won. And like we did Teresa's case, we came together for her and we've done it in many, many cases. And we prevail. And it's because of that, because of this new media that we're living now. We're still going through this transition. And you know, it's not going away. These cops want it to go away, and it's not. Now, I want to ask you, I did that training class. What was that introduced? That's the one question. What was that introduced?
I do want to say something. We actually, this is the most recent one. This is the one we put out last summer, but I want to finish something you said.
Okay.
You made a comment, you keep saying, the cops, the cops, the cops. That's like saying, journalists saying, you and Sean Hannity, you and Fox News. There are good cops and bad cops. There are good lawyers and bad lawyers. There are responsible journalists. There are people who, frankly, don't do anything, who will interfere with an arrest, who will do those things.
Okay.
And it is, frankly, to broadcast everyone kind of undermines your argument.
Well, when the good cops stand up against the bad cops, maybe they should get more recognition. Because what's happening now is the bad cops are doing whatever they want, and the good cops are
Bad cops are a very, very small minority.
Really? Well,
Yes, really.
I get videos every single day, and as you say a small minority, but how can you justify a small minority when people's lives are being ruined? You throw someone in jail, oh, it's a small minority, who cares if you lost your job?
We're not saying who cares, we're saying if you have a complaint, you bring it to us, we investigate it, and we actually fire bad cops.
Well,
that's actually a problem. No, I can give you real case studies. We're talking generalities.
But I mean, anyone familiar with internal affairs knows that police investigating police is...
Depends on the leadership of the institution. This sheriff brought in people to clean it up. We have gone through the cases. We have actually fired officers. We have civilians on an oversight board that we have. You can't use these generalities. It frankly undermines your case. You're just talking crap.
Well,
I'm going to have to step in here for a second. And here I was worried that, I don't know if we're going to have enough controversy. Before there's this one video I really like to play. Hopefully